You're listening to Chicago Stories, a podcast from City Hall featuring the stories of everyday Chicagoans, as told to Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
This is Mayor Rahm Emanuel from Chicago Stories. We're joined by Betsy and Tim from Kartemquin Films. It is the most socially aware and conscious film company in the United States, and it's based here in Chicago. It's like a little gem nobody has heard of, unless you're like a documentary buff. Is that fair?
I'd say in the insider world, we're very well known, but that we are a pretty well kept secret in the broader cultural landscape.
Well, we're going to change that today.
Great.
Okay. How did the company get started, and why Chicago?
You want to take that one?
It started by three guys who were University of Chicago graduates in 1966.
Well, that gives the Chicago reason.
Yeah. So Stan Carter, Gordon Quinn, and Jerry Temina, hence Kartemquin. And they had this vision for making films about ordinary people that would be a way to bring wider societal issues to the focus. And this is, a time where there's new camera equipment that allowed, much more intimate style of film storytelling. And they also had a model of mentoring young filmmakers and collaborating and building kind of a community of filmmakers. And so that's still been our vision for many, many years. And a big thing was that they wanted to stay in the Midwest. They never wanted to leave and go to the coast or anything. And
were they seduced to go to the coast?
No,
I mean,
not really.
Well, Gordon spent some time in New York, and he was thrilled to get back to Chicago.
When Hoop Dreams happened, that was, I remember that. That has to be the breakout moment. Not that we're between 66 and 95, not that there wasn't other work, but that's your breakout moment, and et cetera. I assume that's when all the fairy dust got thrown around them and the seduction began.
Yeah, but Hoop Dreams was not instantaneously a hit. It took a little bit of time.
There was a long fuse on it?
It's like but it is kind of how you said it, where that was a huge smash eventually, and those directors did go to Hollywood, but they're both Chicago guys to this day, Peter Gilbert and Steve James, the director.
Right.
And, they did some Hollywood movies, but they were also still at the same time working at Kartemquin on, future documentaries that were even less sort of on the outside commercially viable than Hoop Dreams. And Gordon Quinn always says, the right move for Steve James to do would have been to do like Hoop Dreams 2 if he'd wanted to be a Hollywood guy. Instead, he made this tiny film called Stevie in Pomona, Illinois, about
Steve.
about sort of a very troubled young man, and so that's a very Kartemquin move.
I'm now doing this. I remember Hoop Dreams, and maybe this was true about other movies. But I just was not aware, and so I say I remember it as the first movie that also by word of mouth, it built an audience. And if there was social media by word of mouth, that was the movie that kind of both documentaries never really got national or any kind of real publicity, and it became known because people were telling people to go see it.
Yeah,
and is that rose-colored glasses and through the rearview mirror?
No, that's a model.
No, that's absolutely, and that's what Kartemquin does to this day. Even though today we have things like social media to help push things out, this is very much an organization of grassroots community building. It has, with the campaigns that we do for our films, have a lot in common with political campaigns. I just want to say too that the way that we highlight ordinary lives of ordinary people is something I also really love about this podcast. Is something that you're doing, is talking about, sure, you've got some famous people sprinkled in there, but the way that you're really highlighting and giving the spotlight to everyday people is really important.
I think, this came about, just 1 second about this, it came about because Amy always listens to podcasts. But I always tell her at dinner when we were talking about, what did you do today? I said, I met this unbelievable. She goes, oh, God, that's great. So at a certain point I said, you know what? Maybe we should just interview the people I meet and let them tell their stories. Because if they're interesting to me, it doesn't mean you're going to be, but they're pretty extraordinary people ordinary people doing pretty extraordinary things, or beating the odds, or doing something that I think you would like to know.
Which is exactly at the heart of what we're doing at Kartemquin, is really just trying to say there are extraordinary stories in the ordinary, everyday lives of people.
How do you, I assume you're getting pitched a lot, or do you guys do your research, always reading constantly journals, papers, etc., or people come to you with?
We get pitched a lot. And of course, everyone who's working at Kartemquin has lots of creative ideas about things, but we have a group of associates that we have worked with for a long time that pitch ideas, and we've got people from all over the country, frankly, all over the world pitching ideas to us. And there's just sort of a right formula for something that feels like it's got the elements that make something a Kartemquin project. And we have a committee of people on staff that we discuss projects and viability and story and mission, how it adheres to our mission, and we make decisions about who to partner with.
I want to talk about documentaries in a second, but Chicago, it's not an accident if you think it's take a step back, and that you have Studs Terkel, Ordinary People. We just had Tim Black on, who's the Great Migration, ordinary people telling their story. And you guys, your films, Kartemquin Films, ordinary people who are doing a story. So why is that here in Chicago? Why? I mean, I know you have people from it's not only about stories in Chicago, but Hoop Dreams was that. But why do you think that kind of narrative format of ordinary folks, both you have now book form, literary form, and film form, and it's here, and not Minneapolis, not actually somewhere? What do you think that is? What's your stab at it? And you I should just shut up because you're shaking your head yes, so go for it, interrupt me.
Well, I have a few thoughts about that.
I come from 3 kids, so just interrupt.
No. I mean, I have some thoughts about that. Being a Midwesterner, I'm not a Chicagoan, but I'm a Midwesterner. And I mean, I'm not Chicagoan by birth, but I really think that there's a sensibility, and I can speak to this probably more versus New York and Los Angeles than I can about a fellow Midwestern city like Minneapolis, although Chicago has the breadth of stories, certainly, that you would find in a New York or a Los Angeles, but a different Midwestern sensibility and appreciation for things that are somewhat lower key, for things that aren't flashy and outwardly famous. Chicago, I don't look at Chicago as a second city. I don't look at Chicago as a competitor to New York. I look at Chicago as its own unique set of values and set of talents, and that the smartest thing Chicagoans can do is embrace our earthiness and who we are as people that have a set of, the cliche of Midwestern values. And that's why I think stories of everyday people really thrive here and really come out of Chicago from Studs on forward.
Well, you're clearly from Chicago with that accent, Tim, so why don't you just kind of weigh in there?
A good question for the English guy. But, I've lived in the Midwest for 11 years now, so it's definitely home. And, we do stories from all around the world. We've made stories in Africa. Abacus is a New York story. But Betsy was talking about how we select films, and whether when we're looking at the film thinking like this is something that could go to Sundance, or this is a first-time director who came through one of our programs and we want them to just really learn what it means to make a feature documentary for the first time. We want to be part of that experience as helping set them up in their career. We're looking for people who want a genuine relationship with us and a genuine relationship with their subjects, and who are going to be genuine in how the film is released to the audience. And to me, that's what people always say about the Midwest. And so I think Kartemquin embodying that is not an accident.
Yeah, I mean, this is all guesswork anyway, trying to figure out the psychology. I think New York and LA are enamored with fame. And Chicago, well, we like anybody else, like to see something or know something about fame. But I think actually, because we're a city of 77 neighborhoods with different cultures, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, there's something about it's just home. That's not true about anybody that's in New York or LA who that DNA is about fame.
Yes.
This is about ordinary people who go about their lives.
Yes, absolutely.
And don't do what they do for fame.
Right.
And they're doing it, in the, again, the case of Abacus, that's a really unheralded story where the New York Times, it was happening in their city, this case, which
and
is
there's short filmmakers there.
Yeah, there's a few filmmakers in New York,
Right.
you know, and you know,
Even
the New
a couple unemployed.
The New York Times wrote about that story twice. Once when the indictment first happened, and once when the trial ended. And yet, you know, it took Mark Mitten, a Chicago guy who's the producer, you know, found the story, and then he contacted Steve James because they worked together on Life Itself, the Roger Ebert film that we did. And they said, look, Mark said, Steve, come to New York with me for 3 days, and let's go see if you connect with this family. And Steve was hooked, and that's become, you know, now an Oscar-nominated film. And it's, you know, just seeing that story, seeing in that family, like, wow, this story blows up
everybody
the whole
about the movie.
financial crisis.
Tell everybody about the movie and why, what you guys saw in the DNA of that story that you thought this is a documentary piece.
Well, I mean, speaking for Steve and Mark, you know, but when it came to Kartemquin, obviously those are trusted.
Well, you're here and they're not, so
they're
speak for
trusted
them.
hands for us.
Right.
You know, like yeah, I think it's a classic David and Goliath tale. There's this tiny Chinatown community bank, this 80-year-old patriarch and his 4 daughters who are all lawyers. And there's some low-level fraud that happened on one employee. They take care of it. They report it to the authorities, in fact. And they have like one of the lowest default rates in the country. Fannie Mae is like, you're emblematic of what we should be dealing with. And yet the Manhattan DA suddenly turns around and has them like lined up in a chain gang and, you know, tries to go right. And if that bank had failed, Chinatown would have failed. It was a central, like, George Bailey of Chinatown is what they call Mr. Sung. And so at great personal cost, this family, you know, could have taken a plea bargain, could have done whatever. And they said, no, we are innocent. We are going to fight for justice. And the film follows their incredible sort of
journey.
Fight for justice. And, you know, it's a lot of the films we make are not always feel-good films. And this is actually a really good, like, comedy feel-good film, despite this family going through this really kind of harrowing experience where the whole, you know, might of
United
the government
States
is against
government
them, you know?
is against this neighborhood bank.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just the skill of the filmmaking of Steve James and his team to
Tease out.
find the warmth, you know, really connect with this family. And, you know, it's like one of the most memorable scenes in that film is like the daughters and the father are like bickering over like a dry avocado sandwich, you know, and that's like what people take away as much as they take away like, wow, why is the whole of our government apparatus like trying to make this tiny bank a scapegoat, and then the big banks are getting away?
They could not
There's
find
no one
anybody
else,
else in
right.
the financial system that committed fraud but this bank.
Right.
And
So
another really striking thing about Abacus at this moment in time is that it's the story of family, and it's the story of 5 very strong women, and 5 strong women of color who are fighting for justice as first-generation Americans. And the narrative.
You mean the thing they came here for? Justice,
Right.
fairness, and front of the law.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Opportunity. That's
you know,
exactly right. And their father is a completely self-made immigrant, and the 4 daughters plus Mrs. Sung, they emerge as serious heroes, and this is just a really great triumphant moment for women and women of color. And the other thing about, regardless of where a story takes place, this is a New York story. A lot of Kartemquin stories come out of Chicago. Some of them don't. They're all universal in what they're talking about, so that, you know, as Gordon Quinn likes to say, you know, and Gordon Quinn is the artistic director and one of the founders of Kartemquin, and an absolutely brilliant filmmaker. And one of the things he likes to say is place really is important. So where a story takes place, it really matters. But our films tend to transcend the place in which they are, and really have universal themes that people can relate to all over.
How did it do at Sundance?
Well, that one was not Sundance.
No,
that was Toronto Film
Well, okay.
Festival.
How did
And
it do there?
It did very well there, and it's a real testament to the power of that film. Again, you know, there are much bigger budget documentaries even, you know, out there, but Abacus premiered at Toronto, which is obviously a great festival,
Right.
and then played festivals and in theaters for like almost a year, and then was aired on Frontline to great acclaim. And now, you know, we were kind of, again, the underdog, which is a position we like to be in, especially apt for this story, in the Oscar nominations. And then on Tuesday morning, you know, we found out, Abacus was one of the nominees, as well as we had another nominee, so it was
Right.
kind of a crazy morning.
Right.
But for us, it was just an amazing vindication.
It's time for you guys to go public. 2 nominees. Let's just go with the IPO right now.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it's been a big week because we were at Sundance and we just got back, and we had 2 projects at Sundance, which we hadn't had since 2014. And we had 2 films Oscar nominated, and the last time we got an Oscar nomination was 24 years ago with Hoop Dreams. So yes, that's why we're talking to you right now, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, I've been tracking you for years.
Yeah.
No, is this this has been? I gotta assume from a recognition standpoint, it's got to be one of the. I mean, when you think about the 2 at the Sundance, 2 at the Oscars, this has got to be one of the best weeks.
Yeah,
since
the
since
phrase
at least 1966.
The phrase I've been saying at home is like, we're surfing on a rocket, because it's sort of, there's a lot to do, because all of a sudden you get the nomination and then it's like, okay, it's time to campaign. And, we have this film at Sundance and it's doing incredibly well in all the reviews. And so all these distribution offers are coming in,
Right.
and it's like, okay, we've got to deal with all that.
So tell me, how do you feel about the Oscars for the movie?
For Abacus?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm an optimist. I feel really good about it. I was less certain we'd get the nomination.
But you're now more certain you're going to win.
Because
Right.
yes,
Actually,
because I think it
weirdly,
was
yes.
it was a huge step to get the nomination, and Steve is so long overdue on his recognition from the Academy, and this film. It's so perfect in so many ways, and so I'm cautiously optimistic. Not even that cautious, obviously.
We'll throw you a party
We're
if
with a
Steve
shot.
says when he goes up there, I want to thank Chicago. Okay? Okay, there'll be a
think he
party.
will. Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. He's
we're
very
wishing-
loyal.
So you feel, do you know obviously we have all the list of the other documentaries.
Yeah, I mean, there are 4 other incredible films. I mean, every year documentary filmmaking seems to get
becomes
stronger
bigger
and stronger. We believe in public media. We're big fans of PBS. Most of our stuff ends there, and obviously they have a more modest budget than Netflix might have. And
For the
so
campaign.
in terms of
Yeah.
the campaigning, we're just going to run a smart, clean campaign. And I think, like Betsy said, this is Steve James is a beloved filmmaker. This is an amazing recognition for him, and it's a story that will work for anyone, and so we have that in our favor.
I'm going to come back to the other film. I don't want to leave it, Edith+Eddie. But I was going to ask this earlier. Why do you think, as you just said, documentaries are becoming there is a bigger and bigger audience, and I think that has something to do with narrative. But why do you think that they have is it the success of the prior movies, or is it because
I
people
think
are
it's-
tired of Hollywood and they want authenticity?
I think it's a perfect storm of a lot of those issues, and both Tim and I have spent our whole careers in nonfiction media, and I'd say that the old cliche about truth being stranger than fiction absolutely holds true, and I also think it's exactly what you said. There's a craving for authenticity. And the way that the Hollywood system is currently set up for independent narrative films is really hard to get them made, and people are tired of tent poles, and people want to see stories that they can attach to characters, that they can really get emotionally involved in. And documentary provides the perfect option for that. And then you combine that with technology and the explosion of platforms that documentaries can be seen on, and the way that documentaries are easier to shoot than ever because of technology.
I refer to documentaries as the original podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's a person usually they're interviewing somebody to tell their story. A podcast is a storyboard.
Well, I think one of the things that's happened and often people credit films like Hoop Dreams for really opening the doors, and we're in the wake of some of those successes, but certainly in the last 10-15 years, Kartemquin's growth has been phenomenal. And there's a multiplicity of stories that people are willing to storytelling styles that people are willing to accept as viewers. There was this sort of this is how you make a documentary. It's talking head and it's very serious. And
You mean stylistically, you think it's become more open, accessible?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. There's people breaking rules all over the place, using reconstruction, putting themselves in, doing things that are like straight verite, but then all of a sudden there's interviews, and it's like, it's just what is the most important way to tell the best story. And again, Steve James is so emblematic of that, because he'll do a film like Life Itself, which is mostly archival, telling the story of Roger Ebert's life, but then he's got this like intimate Roger Ebert in hospital in his last days sort of stuff, which is just like absolutely riveting. And normally, 20 years ago, no one would have thought to do a documentary like that, to dare to pair those two things together.
What's a I apologize for this, non-Kartemquin documentary that you say, we should have done that movie?
Oh, we've got some of those.
If I said, okay, I got a free night, what do I want to watch? And I can order anything I want.
I think it depends on one's mood. If one is ready for something...
Non-sharp objects.
Okay. Well, if you're ready
I'm
for
joking.
something
sure, go ahead.
Big and heavy, act of killing, that's kind of breathtaking, literally takes your breath away.
Okay.
I think in terms of something that's a little bit more entertainment focused, something that's kind of fun, I have a complete guilty pleasure of music docs. I don't think Tim is a huge fan, but I have a complete guilty pleasure of music docs, and there's a whole bunch of those out there that are super fun to watch. 20 Feet from Stardom, Muscle Shoals, a whole lot of those. Tim, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty hardcore documentary nerd.
Yeah.
And so for me, one of the great films of recent years is this film called Cameraperson, where a cinematographer essentially kind of looks back at her entire body of work. And a lot of what there's no narrative, no narration, there's very little text. You're just seeing clips from, essentially discarded clips from a whole bunch of movies. But the way in which that is edited together becomes this incredible memoir. It becomes this meditation on what it means to be behind a camera and in front of it. And that's all done through just, these scenes and the way they're juxtaposed. And, that's breathtaking. Now, Kartemquin doesn't really have a reputation for that sort of formal experimentative work. But, in the last few years, we have been doing stuff where people wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, that's a Kartemquin film in terms of its style. But I think we always retain a thing where it's like the film has to matter. We'll never do something like Glossy without, purpose.
It has a social...
Yeah. As Gordon Quinn says so eloquently, we make films that have consequences in the world. And we are a nonprofit. So...
No, I mean, you take another perspective, or you make people see things beyond what they look like or understand.
Exactly.
So on our film, Edith+Eddie, did you guys fall in love with them?
Yeah, I mean, we fell in love with
Everybody does?
that project.
Yeah, and Tim
so
really
this is the
championed
oldest
that.
mixed race couple. They're in the 90s, am I getting that right?
96 and 95 at the time of filming. And it's in Virginia. It's a New York-based filmmaker, and she saw a picture of them. A friend texted her a picture, and she couldn't stop staring at it. Her name's Laura Checkaway, the filmmaker, and she's the director, producer, editor. It's really a labor of love for her. And she followed this story for a number of years. Now, I'm not going to give away too much of the plot.
Okay.
That's really what we want people to know, is that there's this interracial couple, late life, deeply in love, and then family issues conspire to start tearing them apart. And, it's a 29-minute film. So, if I give away more of the plot, I've given away the whole film. And she was originally trying to make a feature documentary. And then she said, actually, this short, as it is right now, will have this effect where you fall in love with this couple, you see what happens, and then you're indignant. And you're like, what did I just see? I need to make change happen in the world. I need to change how I view my own family planning, and I need to inspire some political change. And we were like, we totally agree, and we want to be part of this film. So we did some little tweaking, but mostly we've been doing the distribution of it. And for Kartemquin, that's another development. We're primarily a production company. So we're having kind of an amazing journey in the world of, being the distributor, for want of a better word. And to take it all the way through to an Oscar nomination is kind of like hitting a home run your first time off at the bat or something,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's an amazing...
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have 2 Oscar films You're telling me you have stuff at Sundance happening.
So if I could tell
go
you
for
a
that, 'cause
little
it
bit
speaks to
about
just
that,
the
it
different
speaks
forms
yes,
of stories
yeah.
we're trying to do all at once.
So
we-
one's about an interracial couple in the 90s. Stop there. We have another one about a bank and the United States government can't find a single financial institution to prosecute, but they find this small little bank in Chinatown in New York.
Right.
The two
And
others.
The other two are Illinois stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there were two of the best received films at Sundance, which was really amazing. One is by a first-time director, Bing Liu, who went through our program, Diverse Voices and Docs. It's another really important thing about Kartemquin is in addition to the film production that we do, we run filmmaker programs. And Diverse Voices and Docs, also known as DVID, is a program we have for mid-career filmmakers of color because we know that there is such a paucity of stories coming from people of color out there in the media world, and we believe so strongly that those are stories that need to be heard. So Bing Liu is a first-time director, and he tells a completely sensitive, nuanced, beautiful story about his teenage and a little bit older years as a skateboarder in Rockford, Illinois, and the relationships he forms with fellow skateboarders. And the film is just a beautiful meditation on friendship. And then, ends up having an amazing story arc of where these young men's lives go and some really scary things that they confront. And it's a beautiful coming of age story. That was one of the best reviewed films, Minding the Gap.
Okay.
You will be seeing this.
Remember the name Bing Liu because
Bing Liu.
Bing Liu?
He came to us 4 years ago in that program, and his idea was to make a film about skateboarders and their parents. And he had 3 minutes of footage, and we were like, well, this 3 minutes of footage is some of the best skateboarding footage we've ever seen, and then for 4 years we've just watched him get braver and braver, and he's
so cool.
This is an incredible filmmaking talent. And Steve James signed on to be his executive producer because I think he saw this is kind of
this guy's going places.
it's similar to the story we have from Hoop Dreams where Steve and his collaborator, Frederick Marks, showed up and wanted to make a 30-minute film about a basketball court. And, it took them 6 years, and then Hoop Dreams came out. And here's the same thing with Bing again. And, this is, again, what we love to do with Kartemquin. And then Steve hired Bing to be a director on a very different scale of project, which is this 10-hour TV series that we've just done.
This is the second one?
This is the second one. We just showed this 5 hours at Sundance. It's
What's it called?
America to Me, and it's about Oak Park River Forest High School. And Steve James got permission from the school to film a whole year inside the school, and he then hired 3 directors, Bing, Rebecca Parrish, and Kevin Shaw, multiracial, different ages team, and because he wanted to have them connect with individual kids. We followed 12 kids over 10 hours, and really it's looking at the racial achievement gap in that school and looking at that because it's a school that's performing well.
And a well-funded community.
And yet these issues
liberal
persist.
community.
So give me the two. I want everybody to hear the two names of the films again.
America to Me.
America to Me
is the 10-part TV series, and Minding the Gap is an individual documentary feature. And so you're saying we have a good week. So we had the world premiere of Minding the Gap. Incredible response, just dreamy reviews.
That was Sunday night.
Night. Monday morning, we announced that Starz has acquired America to Me for $5 million.
Oh, as we would say on Chicago Stories, Mazel Tov.
You're right. And then we have the world premiere of America to Me that night, and again, dreamy reviews. And then Tuesday morning, we get the Oscar announcement.
Any good Jewish mother would say, "What are you going to do for me on Saturday?" I'm
going to sleep because it's been quite a week.
That is a great story. So let me. I'm going to issue. I think I shouldn't do this to you, but we have 2, and we think a third art high school. So I have 2 options for you. And I want you to think about it. I don't want you to answer on here. One is helping us think about how to get a film class into the art high school, one of the 3.
Like Shy Arts, you mean?
Yeah, it's like Shy Arts, but we're also going to be opening another one on the south side. this, you should know there's also a neighborhood opportunity fund. And we invest in businesses and give them $100,000 for expansion. There's a woman of color does documentary stuff, not documentary, films made by women of color.
Who? Yvonne?
Yes.
Yvonne Wellbon?
Yeah,
she's a friend of ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, so we gave her some resources to help. On
I
the
just saw her. She just sent me the information, and I talked about. I sent her a huge muzzle tov on that. Yeah.
So the other thing is, so we have the largest summer jobs program. It's called One Summer Chicago. We pay the kids, et cetera, et cetera. And I did this with Amanda Williams on painting homes for the summer. She didn't, not that she didn't want to do it. She didn't want to. I'm in the middle of my work. I don't want to do a summer job. I don't want to be a camp counselor. End of the day, she did it, and she loved it and has done it every year since. So I like to think about, as a summer jobs, we'll work with you. We'll do all the paying of a summer film with the summer jobs, and you guys gestate on it. Talk. Yes, Chicago kids.
Love it.
Yeah.
And we'll do the money. So
it's
your time in a sense.
We get every now and then we have schools come and say like we got to bring kids by and whatever. We're in this tiny old ramshackle house on the north side.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
we know.
Yeah.
We had something to do with that house.
Yeah. So it's really just been sort of how do we manifest that? But
you guys think about it, but
that would be incredible.
And we'll do the
cool.
results. So okay, here's our quick round. Okay. And since you're now in both Chicagoans, Cubs or Sox?
Cubs.
Go ahead.
I can't really. Well, I guess
Too
if I
much for
had to
politicians.
choose, no,
just
it's
got
because
to.
if I had to,
Yeah, you have to. You don't get that.
She's Cardinals.
I'm from St. Louis.
Just go ahead.
So, Sox,
I'll answer
I guess.
for you. Yeah, Sox. You would never say Cubs. You could not do that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Thick or thin pizza?
Thin.
Then,
No.
sorry.
It's okay.
We
It's
have to
okay.
watch our carb intake. Okay.
The lake or the river?
Oh, lake.
Like
Okay. The Hancock or Willis/Sears Tower?
I've never been in the Willis. I got to correct that. So Hancock.
I prefer the views from the Hancock.
Okay. 16-inch or 12-inch softball?
Cricket.
12-inch.
Betsy, Tim, it's great to have you. This is Chicago Stories, and we're going to be rooting for you, man.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks for having us.
No, I'm really.
This is such a great podcast.
I want people to know about you, what you guys
amazing.
are doing. It's great for the city, and I don't think it's an accident. It's here in Chicago.
We agree.
No,
All right, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're listening to Chicago Stories with Mayor Rahm Emanuel. You can subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tweet your guest ideas using #ShyStories. Thanks for listening.